Hello and welcome back to the Mindset Project podcast. My name is Lewis Conde and my aim is to give you the tools to develop and improve your mindset. By drawing on my own experiences as a competitive swimmer, as well as the opinions and experiences of other incredible individuals, I hope to expose you to an alternative way of thinking. And in doing so, I hope that inspires some sort of personal growth. I believe that through mindset development, we can strive physically, mentally and emotionally. I hope you're all doing well, staying positive and staying healthy. So let's get on to it. Welcome back to another episode of the Mindset Project podcast. On this week's episode, we have another guest, if you haven't already guessed by the title. So I got to have a chat with Adam Stansbury. In this episode, we talk about a whole range of things, from personal training, fitness, health, spirituality, Reiki. And as you'll soon find out, Adam has had quite a journey, which we talk about. And the main reason I wanted to have a chat with him is that he has used in the past what are known as plant medicines. And what I mean regarding plant medicines are things like mushrooms, Kambo and Bufo. And some people might know these as psychedelics. Now, this is not an episode about psychedelics, but we do talk about these quote-unquote alternative medicines. And I think this is the first episode where I actually feel challenged myself, because I don't personally advocate the use of psychedelics. Now that's just my opinion, but as you'll soon as hear and discuss in this episode, psychedelics aren't for everyone. And the reason I wanted to explore this topic was to improve my own understanding of them, because I've never heard of Kambo or Bufo before I did this episode, but I did have an opinion on them, even although I didn't really know what they were. So I guess it's more about my own ignorance more than anything. And the whole point of this podcast is exposing you and myself to different people, different views and perspectives, because I believe that is how we develop our own mindset, by constantly challenging our own. So without further ado, I really hope you enjoyed this episode, as it is very, very interesting. So let's get on to it. So welcome back to another episode of the Mindset Project podcast. On this week's episode, we have another guest, and this week we have Adam Stansbury. Now, Adam is a qualified personal trainer, he is an author, and he is a life coach as well. So on this episode, we're just going to sort of delve into his sort of journey through fitness. And an interesting thing about Adam is he uses lots of plant medicines. So we're going to sort of delve into what these sort of are, and sort of not different sort of way to look at health. So welcome, Adam.
Thanks for having me, Lewis. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so we're just going to get stuck right in, and the first question is, you described your life journey as being fairly diverse. So what has your journey been so far up until now?
That's a big question. Where do you begin? Right at the beginning, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it's ranged. I try and summarize everything as much as possible. I'm 45 now, and I've kind of had quite a few experiences, but it's gone from really not knowing what I wanted to do with my life for many years, until I hit sort of 30, really. Did various jobs over the years. I went to college and studied fish farming and fishery management. I worked in a factory, then moved into a systems department, then became a computer programmer for a bit, did some web development, then was encouraged to get into modeling. So I was modeling for a few years, ended up on the recruitment team at Abercrombie and Fitch in London, looking for good-looking people to work in the store at the time. And then I had a moment of clarity through a conversation that I had with my brother, that led me to realize that I was always seeking this. What's my purpose? What do I want to do with my life? And I just did not know. And I think I know now, looking back, that's been my journey, and that's what I'm trying to help people with now, to find their purpose and direction. So that's become quite a big thing in terms of what I'm doing present day. But back then, yeah, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I had this conversation with my brother, which led me to kind of reflecting on what's my inner geek, what's the one thing that I would love to do 24 hours a day and I wouldn't get bored of doing or talking about. And it suddenly came to me. I was like, oh, it's fitness, it's training, it's the gym, it's talking about nutrition. All of this stuff I was so passionate about at the time, and had been doing personally for like 10 years probably at that point. And at that point, I realized I needed to, personal training was calling me. And so, yeah, literally a couple of months later, I started studying my personal training qualifications, which I did in back in 2009. And that was really the start of that journey into being a personal trainer, which then led me to working in several really good gyms in London, then leaving London, going down to Devon and joining an organization called Winners 2000. At the time, I thought it was a bad career move going from London to Devon, but it turned out to be one of the best career moves I could have made. The organization is run by a guy called Simon Jeffries, really inspiring, thought-provoking kind of leader, passionate about his business, passionate about his team. And we and every year entered the National Fitness Awards. And the first year I was down there in 2012, we ended up winning the Gym of the Year at the National Fitness Awards. That was the first time that they'd won it. And then Simon encouraged me to enter for the following year to be Personal Trainer of the Year. So I entered it a bit cringingly, because you have to put yourself forward for these things. And I ended up winning it in 2013, which was, that was the sort of peak of my career, I would say, at that point. And I'd achieved so much in such a short space of time down in Devon, but felt this calling to get back to London. And so I came back to London and carried on as a freelance trainer. But really, from that point, I've been reflecting on recently. I think my enthusiasm or my journey in fitness then was on a downward slope from that point, really. But I started my online coaching, online personal training. That was always something that I wanted to push more of, because I wanted more flexibility in the location I could be in. And then I got an opportunity. Well, I basically my goal for 2020 was to get all of my clients online, and to really make this online personal training thing actually happen. Because it had just been a pipe dream for probably the best part of 10 years, after reading Tim Ferriss's The 4 Hour Work Week, which kind of set the wheels in motion. And then in 2020, I decided I was going to make it happen. I only had a couple of one-to-one clients left at the time in London, and then COVID hit, and I suddenly realized that everything that I was doing was online, and why was I sat in London when I could be anywhere? And I ended up then in August 2020 moving to Ibiza. So for the best part of 2 years, I was living in Ibiza, doing online training a couple of clients like around the back of my house. I made my own gym, which was really cool. Kind of just doing enough to really get by. And then last year decided it was time to leave the island, and I went on another adventure to South America last autumn for 3 months, which combined plant medicines, as you alluded to in the intro. And then I came back to the UK last December. I mean, there's lots of other little bits that I think I've missed out to this point, but I'll leave it there for now.
Okay, so on your sort of like little profile on Matchmaker, it said that you did some sort of fitness and bodybuilding shows, which I'm
Yeah,
guessing were the competitions.
yeah.
So what were the biggest lessons that you learned from doing that sort of process going through?
Yeah, well, I've realized that I love a process. I'm really process driven, and I look back at my time as a computer programmer. I loved being given a problem and then having to find a solution, and using the tools at my disposal to sort of find that solution. I always find that very rewarding. And so kind of fitness and bodybuilding was a very similar thing for me. It's just like, okay, here's the problem. I need to be on stage around about this body fat, around about this body weight on this specific date. I've got 12, 13, 14 weeks until then. And that kind of reverse engineering of the problem to actually look at what were the behavioral habits that I needed to adopt on a daily basis to sort of get there. So for me, the process was so much more enjoyable than the end product almost. The show day was almost a bit, I used to find a bit of a pain, really, having to shave your body and get super tanned and then get on stage. It was the journey, it was the changing, seeing my body transform, it was the training and the purpose driven training that was really powerful for me. But it taught me a lot about my body, taught me a lot about discipline, the process of sort of application and taking just very small behavioral habits on a daily basis, and then when you add them all up over a long period of time, they accumulate and they create your dream. And it's it's a really powerful, it's the way we should really approach any goals that we have. It's the same thing, it's like having that outcome goal, which I look at as a brick wall, and then looking at all your daily behavioral habits as the bricks that you build to build your wall, you put in to build the wall. And so that was, I think that's probably the biggest takeaway that I got from the process, really, was understanding outcome goals, behavioral habits, and how that all fitted together.
Yeah, sort of like understanding the importance of the process rather than, always looking at the end goal. So obviously, like, the end goal is really important, but the process to get there is probably more important.
Yeah, like 100%. I think as human beings, we get wrapped up in that destination, don't we, a lot? But I realize also as well through bodybuilding that's always changing, ever evolving. You never get to that end point because you're never quite happy with where you're at. There's always something to improve on, and I think that goes for many areas of our lives. Yeah.
Yeah, that was something I sort of learned during the pandemic when we were sort of only allowed out for like 30 minutes exercise. I was lucky enough to where I was staying at the time. There was like this huge hill like up the back of where I was staying. So I was just go up there every single day. And there was this one day where it was like super, super foggy. But I could see like the only sort of where I could see was like where my feet were going. I couldn't actually see the top of the hill. So I realized like as long as I can see like the first step I'm taking, then I will eventually get to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's another thing I've learned is, fall in love with the process, fall in love with taking each step. Forget about how or the end goal, and just just be in love with it. It's presence, isn't it? It's really bringing yourself into this present moment and dealing with what's directly in front of you.
Yeah. So the next questions are sort of like a transition into the sort of plant-based medicine sort of stuff. And that is like, what is alternative health? Because I think, it's alternative health might be the sort of correct term to look at sort of the plant-based stuff. So what would you describe alternative health as?
What would I describe alternative? I guess, and I guess a way of optimizing human health that's not necessarily mainstream and maybe that's not widely accepted by kind of the mainstream medicine. Let's put it like that, in society. I think just a different way of looking at health, rather than looking at chemicals and pills and stuff like that to affect the health of the human body. It's actually looking at the effect everything has on us, from stress, relationships, our environment, obviously the food we eat, what we put into our eyes, our ears, and our mouth, ultimately, and how it affects the holistic way of looking at things. And so, I guess alternative, though, there's probably many levels to that as well. I'm also a Reiki master, so that could also be seen by a lot of people as a bit woo-woo and a bit way out there. And it kind of was to me for a while, even after doing my level 1. It wasn't until I had some direct experience from doing sessions with people that I started to think, oh, there is actually something here. I can feel energy pulsing through my hands. People are giving me feedback. They can feel something. Like, this isn't, I'm not making this up, you know, this is actually a reality. So through my direct experience, I became to understand. I'm very much like that, you know. I think it's I don't buy into anything completely until I've had direct experience of it, and then I can, you know, assess that from my own perspective. And then, you know, it's the same thing with plant medicine. It's like you can't talk to me or downplay the plant-based experience or what's going on in a psychedelic experience until you've had that experience. So go away and have the experience, and then come back to me, and let's have a discussion, because your mind, your idea of what it is will be very different once you've had it, you know. So yeah, the plant-based journey for me began back in 2014. I was stuck. I felt like I was really stuck in my life. Actually, funny enough, that combined with, I just got back to London and I was freelance personal training. Felt like I was quite stuck in many aspects, and I didn't know where to turn, or kind of where I was going to find the solution to what I was going through at the time. And I couldn't really put my finger on what that was, but there was obviously part of me that was seeking something deeper and more purposeful. Yeah, and I was lucky enough to gain access to a retreat in the UK, and I ended up doing my first experience in September 2014. Which was totally mind-blowing, and that led me on a kind of 8-year journey with ayahuasca and plant medicine ceremonies that took me sort of to South America. I did a retreat in Peru in the jungle in 2016. Did many ceremonies in the UK at different places, Ibiza, also many in Ibiza, and then back to South America last autumn in Colombia. And so it's been quite a journey with it myself over the last 8 years, and I've had some big realizations that have really helped me.
So two of them that you've named on your sort of like profile are Bufo and Kambo. So it's more of a sort of interest, like what are these, and sort of what are their benefits for anyone who might be thinking of what are these?
So I think I'd just like to, before we delve into it, is like underline that this isn't for everyone, and it's also not forever, and it's not the one thing fixes everything. You know, these are all tools that are available to all of us to use at different times in our lives when we feel called to use them for different purposes and different reasons. Just like with Reiki, just like with ayahuasca, you know, ayahuasca doesn't fix everything. It might help you for one thing, but you know, and it may work for some people and may not for others. And so it's a very an intuitive thing that you start to realize when you've been on the journey. But Kambo was something that I hadn't wanted to experience, even after I became aware of it. After sort of several years of doing ayahuasca, it still wasn't something that called to me until at the start of 2019. So Kambo's a venom or poison taken from an Amazonian frog. They come out of the Amazon, and the poison is taken from the glands on I think it's their thighs, and it's dried onto sticks, and then it's administered in a ceremony. You can do like one-to-one ceremonies or group ceremonies, and a burn mark is put on your skin, on different points on your skin, just to break the top layer of skin. That's wiped away, and then the poison's put onto that dot for your body sort of to absorb it. It can be a really difficult, challenging, and horrible experience. You kind of basically feel very ill for about half an hour, and it's your I don't want to get all of this. I'm not going to get all of this wrong, but it's your kind of your body's expelling toxins essentially. So you end up you drink a lot of water before the ceremony, about 1.5 liters, and then you vomit most of that up, and the end goal is to try and get the yellow bile that is being kind of released by I think it's your gallbladder or your liver, and once you vomit up that yellow bile, it's like you get this total release of wellness that comes back to you, and that's kind of the point in which you're trying to get to. And at that point, the facilitator will wipe the poison off the points on your body. You might have had like several, 3, 4, 5, 6, some, depending on your tolerance. And then the moment the poison is taken off those dots, you sort of start to come down, usually very fatigued at that point, and you rest up and gradually get fluid back into your body. And the point of it is that Kambo really helps you physically, detoxifies the body, the organs, but also it can really help you energetically release any blockages. It can help you let go of anything that's no longer serving you. For me, when I first experienced it in 2019, I had this real deep feeling that I needed to get back in contact with my spiritual self, and I sort of lost that a little bit over the year previous to that. I hadn't done so much plant medicine, had a big break from it. And then Kambo, the opportunity to do Kambo just landed in my lap really quite fortuitously. And I was going through a really difficult time in my marriage at the time. And I did 3 weeks of Kambo ceremonies, so 3 back-to-back, 1 a week. And I ultimately, it kind of gave me the courage to kind of end the marriage that I was in at the time, and which was the right decision. But I think that reconnecting me with my path helped me to give me the courage that I needed to make certain decisions. So for me, and Kambo is again one of these things that comes in and out of my life. I don't feel called to do it right now, but you never say never. There'll come a time where it's like, okay, could be good to do it again. It can also be helpful leading up to doing an ayahuasca ceremony, because it can help to release any toxins as you and release energy as you, and create more clarity in your system as you go towards a more deeper ayahuasca experience. Bufo alvarius is a psychedelic that comes from a toad in Mexico, I think it is. And that's smoked usually through a pipe. I've only done it once, and it was that was an incredible experience that's very difficult to explain, like so many of these experiences. I came out of that, it's such a short, sharp thing, but it forces you to let go on a level like that you've never let go before. And I came out of that experience so much lighter and freer, and more peaceful than I'd felt for a long time. And again, it's one of those experiences that's it's so big that it's not like you want to do it again the following day. And I certainly don't feel called to do it again at the moment. I had the opportunity to do it again last autumn, but it wasn't something that was calling to me. So I think the key thing with all of these medicines is that don't fall into the trap of doing ceremony after ceremony and ceremony, feeling like the medicine is the thing that's going to do the work for you. Ultimately, it creates a window for you, an opportunity to see yourself in a different way, and allows you the opportunity to learn certain lessons to integrate and apply in your life. I see all of these things as tools to help us live a more graceful existence. It doesn't remove the challenges, but it helps you to navigate life with a different perspective, I would say.
Yeah. So obviously you both come from like South America. So is it a sort of, have they been used by like sort of tribes, or are they sort of like old practices?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, yeah, I couldn't even give you a date as to when they, they're thousands and thousands of years old, used by indigenous tribes in the Amazon. This is the thing there's so much knowledge in the Amazon. There's so many incredible healing plants, and of course the indigenous people that live in these areas have lived there for eons and have a deep understanding and relationship with these plants, with the animals, with nature. They're very symbiotic. They live symbiotically with it all, you know. So for me, that's one thing that we need to try and protect is not just the plants, but the indigenous people that hold all the wisdom and the knowledge surrounding them.
So like in many ways, there's not, we might call it alternative, but it could potentially be like traditional medicine if it's from.
Yeah, I guess it's perspective, isn't it? It's like it's alternative to us, but to them, that is the traditional medicine that they would use. And I think the way they would look at healing someone is very different to how we look at it in this country, you know, in this society. In that, I think we're starting to cotton on now, with like mental health awareness, PTSD, and stuff like that. It's obviously becoming more understood. But I think someone in a more indigenous environment would look at, you know, someone who had maybe a physical issue. They would obviously try and treat the physical issue, but they would very much look on the deeper spiritual side of their healing as well, energetically helping them. So they would naturally just take a more holistic approach than just like, oh, there's a broken arm, let's fix the broken arm and off you go, and that's the end of the problem, kind of thing.
Yeah, because like I always, spices are also another sort of traditional medicine. That there's so many healing things with spices. Like turmeric's a great one for anti-inflammatory. Um,
Mm,
chili's good for congestion.
mm,
So again, it's sort of, I would say, it's more traditional. To,
yeah, I think it was I think maybe a couple of 100 years ago it's probably more traditional. I think it's just been the rise of pharmacology and the rise of pharmaceuticals that have like pushed it to one side. And but yeah, it's our natural way. But you know, we are nature, we are part of nature, and we've created the system that's um disconnecting us with that. And you know, the natural world has everything we need, you know, to survive: food, water, medicine, healing, energy. You know, it has it all for us. That's why we're here.
yeah.
Mm.
So next question. You mentioned that you did Reiki. So how did you end up getting into that as well?
Yeah. It was at the first couple of ayahuasca retreats I did in the UK. One of the helpers was a Reiki master, and we became really good friends. And as I started on that sort of journey, I became more interested in, you know, I guess what's beyond the veil. And he would hold regular kind of workshops and stuff. So I decided to do my Reiki level 1 with him. Um, and then I think maybe 6 months later, I did my level 2. Then one of my best friends for many, many years, who I ended up in a relationship with, she was a Reiki master, and I did my Reiki masters with her. And so yeah, it's been quite a journey with Reiki as well. And it's something that kind of comes in and out of my life. I use it more, I'd say, on myself right now. It's it's very powerful, and I think more people should be encouraged to place intention and awareness on areas of their body that maybe need healing, and start channeling that kind of intention into those parts of your body. I mean, recently I've had quite a few experiences where I've had some aches and pains myself, and I've gone into like a meditation and asked for help and done some Reiki on me, some self-healing, and the next morning I've woken up and they've gone, kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of how it started for me.
And just for anyone that might be listening, thinking, "What is Reiki?" Could you explain, like, what, just quickly,
Yeah,
what?
yeah. Reiki stands for universal energy in Japanese, and you're essentially you're essentially using not your own energy, but you're channeling the universal energy that's all around us through your body, and out of your hands, and you're placing your hands either on someone's body or slightly above them in different areas. A lot of the time you're working around the sort of the main energy centers, chakras on the body, or specific points of the body that might need some sort of direct healing. And the idea is that you know, there's a kind of a little bit like with ayahuasca and plant medicine, really, there's an intelligence to it. There's an intelligence within the energy that kind of finds its way to the area of the body that needs it the most. And it can provide a lot of relief for people. It can help to release any mental blockages. It can relieve physical sort of symptoms or aches and pains. That's essentially it.
Yeah, I know a few people who do Reiki, and I'm all into that sort of like energy stuff as well. So you are an author as well, and you have a new book out as well, is it called Journey to the Center of Your Soul?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. It's literally nearly a year since it came out, actually. It came through me in I was going through a difficult breakup at the time, and there was one night, a friend sent me a couple of podcasts, and all of the sections and the subheadings for the book kind of really literally just came to me one night. You know, I think there's lots of ideas that I'd had floating around for a while, but they all just seemed to just cement and come through this one night within like an hour and a half. And I wrote them all down on this sheet of paper, and I turned around to my housemate at the time and I said, I'm going to start writing my next book tomorrow. Because I'd already written one that I'd released a year before on plant-based nutrition and fitness. I had a good process behind me in terms of how to write the book. And so I went on a real journey writing the book that, as I was writing it, I thought, I'm not sure is this going to be a book? What is this going to be? And I decided to not allow myself to get too caught up in what it was going to end up as. And I would just allow myself to be with the process, which is what we were talking about earlier. And it was obviously, I was going through a lot of healing and hurt at the time, and pain, emotional pain. So it became quite a cathartic process for me. And the journey to the center of your soul, essentially, it's a journey through 3 different layers of relating that we have in our lives. Firstly, how we relate to the environment, and then to how we relate to other people through different forms of relationships, romantic, friendships, family relationships. And then ultimately in the core is the relationship you have with yourself. And it's through the observation of how you relate to these different things in your lives that give you a deeper understanding of who you are and who you want to be. Ultimately, if you were in a vacuum with nothing else around it, you wouldn't know who you were. So it's only by knowing yourself in relation to something else that you get to build a picture up of who Lewis is and what Lewis likes and dislikes. And so that's essentially the journey of the book. It's helping people to go through these layers and look at life ultimately happening for you rather than to you, and seeing that everything is an opportunity to look at, like, who am I in relation to this? What is this situation, this thing, this person, this circumstance, this environment showing me about myself? And one of the core tenets and principles of the book, also sort of that came through another great book that I love called Conversations with God, is that you can only know yourself by knowing who you are not, you know. And so it's kind of really encouraging people to look at themselves in that light, and see everything that's happening in your life as an opportunity to learn and see, you know, seeing the breadcrumbs, seeing the signposts that are pointing you in the right direction.
So it's a bit of a personal journey.
Yeah, it is totally a personal journey, and that ultimately also led into the coaching program course that I put together last year called Inner Earth, which is a 6-week guided journey through 6 different mythical realms. Each different realm each week relates to a different part of your life, which also connects to a different archetypal character, which is very symbolic of characteristics that exist within all of us. And it asks questions and provides content throughout that journey as well. And that was also a very kind of almost divinely processed thing that came through me. Just before I started writing the book, I had this idea for this project, and it didn't quite make sense to me at the time. There was some gaps in it, and I couldn't work out how it was going to have some sort of practical application. I was looking at the time to try and leave behind personal training and fitness and find what my new thing was. And I think I was looking for something, but this didn't quite make sense. And so I put it to the side. Then I went through my whole journey writing the book. And at the start of last year, once I'd finished the book, I realized that the book was the missing piece of the puzzle for the program that I'd started to write. And I really just had this big push of like joyful inspiration and motivation, and I just allowed myself to really run with it, really go with it. And I created this it's my best piece of work to date, definitely. I'm really proud of it, and I've taken quite a few people on the journey already, and it's had a real impact on a lot of people. And that's really my main focus right now is that journey.
Well, I'm gonna check that out because it sounds like right up my right up my street.
Yeah.
So, last question. Obviously, this is the Mindset Project podcast. So, what does mindset mean to you?
What does mindset mean to me? I think it's an approach. It's your approach. It's your approach to your day. It's your approach to your life. It's your approach to different sort of situations and how you see things. And I would say that's kind of different, different for all of us as well. But for me, that's what kind of really springs to my mind. What's my mindset? Oh, it's what's my mindset today? Oh, how am I gonna? Where's my mind at today? What approach am I going to take today in doing what I'm doing? Yeah, maybe it's where you're in any given moment. It's
Yeah.
where your thoughts are, where your mind is going, and yeah, in that moment, I would
Sort
say.
of your sort of perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, just to sort of finish up, is there anything else you want to add, or like where can people find you, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, man. My website's adamstansbury.com. I run a free 14-day, I'm calling it the Intuition Upgrade. I do one a month, and it's a free 14-day program to help anyone with the sort of lack of direction who's looking to get more clarity in their purpose. It includes video lessons. It's a live Facebook group, but also daily email lessons as well. There's the next one is starting. I'm not sure when this podcast is coming out, but the next one starts on Monday, the 5th of June, which is this coming Monday. If you missed that one, then the following one will be at the start of July, on the 3rd of July. I think it is Monday, the 3rd of July. So that's a free program that I run once a month. And then, like I talked about before, Inner Earth is my sort of 6-week journey of self-discovery, basically, that I work with people on and facilitate, and in helping them to find a deeper understanding of themselves, who they are, who they want to be, so that by the time they finish the journey, they have a deep sense of that and understanding, and really know who they are moving forward with their lives. So that's what I'm really passionate about. I'm really helping people to find their purpose, something I struggled with for a long time in my life. So I feel that's why I'm here, is to help people with that, using my own experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Very grateful. There's lots of that we talked about, lots that we covered. And yeah, that's
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Lewis. I really appreciate it.
yeah.
Thanks, brother. Bye-bye.
So again, I really hope you enjoyed that episode with Adam. Plant medicines are not my expertise at all, so it was really interesting to have a chat with him about this topic, and from me personally, learn more about this sort of topic in this area, because like I said in the intro, I sort of had this opinion about psychedelics, and even though I never knew about Kambo or Bufo or any other sort of psychedelics out there, and for me it was sort of like being a bit ignorant, and for me this episode was really sort of educational, and I hope it might be educational for you as well. And one thing I would say is sometimes, medicines that we get from the doctors aren't always going to work. Sometimes they might not work, and in those cases, sometimes taking a more holistic approach, perhaps through plant-based medicines, is the way to go for us. And another holistic approach might be like meditation. Meditations are sort of becoming more and more used nowadays to sort of help with anxiety, mental health issues. And with regards to psychedelics, like I said at the intro and what we sort of discussed in the episode, is that they're not for everyone, and that is probably the biggest thing I want to stress here. And for me personally, I prefer to use more sort of natural medicines. Obviously some people might argue that these sort of plant-based medicines are natural, but I would probably go more towards natural non-psychedelic, if that makes sense. And I am a huge advocate of using spices, something I sort of briefly touched on in this episode, and I actually did an episode on spices way back at the very start of starting this podcast. Spices are so versatile. They're not just things that add taste and flavour to your food. They can actually be used to help things like colds, congestion, inflammation as well. And sort of one thing I sort of discussed in this episode is that before sort of modern medicine, there had to be something that people used to sort of cure illnesses. Obviously they're not as advanced as sort of medicines that we have today, but they still managed to partially cure, I guess you could call it. And when we sort of talked about these sort of Kambo and Bufo, they are sort of coming from these sort of traditional, almost like tribes in South America. So they've probably been using these for generations, probably thousands of years. So although they might be considered alternative medicines, like I said in the episode, they're probably more natural, potentially, if you want to call them that. And I guess it's really about how you sort of look at these things and your sort of perspective you have towards this sort of branch of medicine, I guess you can call it. And just because I sort of advocate sort of more natural, holistic approach to medicine, that doesn't necessarily mean that modern medicine or science is necessarily a bad thing, or you should stop just taking your medication, because there's some things that you need medication for. But if there is a natural way to sort of try and cure that or help alleviate whatever it is you have, then for me personally, I think that trying the natural approach first, and if that doesn't work, then obviously go and get the medicine that you need, because ultimately it comes down to what is the best method of you to promote the best health and allow you to do things that you can on a day-to-day basis. So that's coming to the end of this episode. All I really want to say is that I really hope you enjoyed this episode. It's the topic of this episode, obviously we talked more generally about other things, but the sort of plant-based medicine was something different, and I kind of want to explore that topic at another time, mostly because I just really enjoy getting to know people and chat to people in an area where I don't necessarily have that much knowledge. I just find that very sort of interesting, obviously educational as well, And like I keep saying, the whole point of changing your perspective is to expose yourself to these different perspectives and different opinions. And something I was thinking about the other day was, if you are someone who has an interesting background in a particular topic, or you know someone who is, or there's topics that you want me to discuss and delve into, then please let me know either on the Instagram page or comment on the YouTube channel or whatever, because mindset is such a broad topic. I want to try and touch as many different subjects as much as I can, because I really want to really push changing people's perspectives on a whole range of issues. And I think the only way I can do that is try and get as many different people and different opinions on this podcast as I can. And you might be listening right now thinking that you have an interesting topic that you want to discuss, or you might have a very niche area of expertise. And if you are one of those people, please get in touch, because I want to share your story with everyone who's listening to this podcast. So with that, stay positive, stay safe, and I shall see you on the next one.